All right, this is the assembly guide for the FrankenTimer by Game Mode Repository. Sorry, the video is not the best. I think sometimes I might be slightly out of frame, but it is what it is. So hopefully it helps make building this timer easier. Just as a note, so for this timer, this video is to help you kind of visually understand where things go. But you'll also want to use the build guide on the website. So both the electronics build guide and the assembly guide. The assembly guide will give you like wiring diagrams and things that will help out, and then the electronics just gives you other helpful hints as well. So you kind of need to read all those guides together, and hopefully this should help you figure out how to assemble this. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to install the heat inserts into the different layers. So if you're building the core, you take layer 3, there's a heat insert here and here for the LCD screen. On the rotary encoder piece, there are 2 inserts as well, so there's one here and here. On layer 5, where the Arduino attaches, there's 2, so one here and here. Again, layer 6, just keeping the numbering scheme. The main difference here is I added something right here for bridging, and I also added some gap there for running some wires. And then also you now have a hard, or you have a bottom layer here, and you also have that through hole right there. So that's a little bit different. You're still going to put 10 heat sinks in here. So you got one here, 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 here. Flip it over, one there, one there, one there, one there. And I don't have them installed right now, but you'll put one here and you'll put one here. So those heat inserts are still the same. The only difference between this and the previous version is now you have this area right here, and you also have this area here with this chute for the wires. All right, if you're gonna install the MP3 base, there's this little MP3 drawer holder. There is a spot right there for a heat insert. That's to lock it in place. So you could put it right there. All right, so then on the shell, you have several that you can heat inserts you're gonna install. So you got one here, 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 and here on the top. And then on the bottom, you have 4 that you need to install. So the ones that are on the outer edge are the ones that you need to install. The ones on the inner edge, those are optional. Those are if you're using the MP3 base and you want to bolt the MP3 base directly to the shell. You don't have to necessarily do that, so those 4 are optional. Additionally, there are 2 more over here that are optional. These don't have any use at the moment, but I'm hoping to add an upgrade that we'll use those in the future. All right, and then lastly, you have your base, your new battery compartment. So this is the new battery compartment, and that has 2 spots for heat inserts here and here. Those are for if you want to be able to mount, like screw this onto like a bucket or something like that, you can screw them in through the bottom to that. So if you put a hole in the lid of the bucket, you can screw that on. These are all bolt holes, so it's just these 2 right here that are heat inserts. All right, so up next, you're going to want to cut all your wires, and I'm going to put that table on the website. I'll show it here real quickly, but I'd say either just pause this, go to the website, look at that table. That's going to tell you how to cut all your wires. All right, so up next, you're going to want to cut your LED strip. So you're going to want to count out 40 LEDs. So right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So do that all the way down until you get 40. Once you get to 40, right, you can use like some scissors, and you're going to cut it right down the center of the leads. So that's how you cut the LED strip. All right, so you should go ahead and solder on your wires to your power strip. So we got these ones here, this one here. I labeled all mine based off that chart that I cut, so I'm not going to go through and tell you all the links. But you do want to do the two wires that are going to go to USB. They should be on this left pin. The wire that needs to go to the twist cap is going to be on the right pin. It looks kind of like a center pin if there was a third pin, but it's that one right there. One other thing you want to be careful about is you don't want these to extend down too far. So you want to do a nice short little area there. Don't extend your heat shrink too far down. Just to make sure that there's enough clearance underneath the part. All right, and that's soldering your power switch. All right, so next you're gonna want to cut your wires for the rotary encoder and solder those on. So then, right, so you have on your rotary encoder, you have 2 prongs on one side, 3 prongs on the other side. So you'll solder the green wire to one of the prongs on the 2 sides, it doesn't matter which one. And then you will solder the ground wire to the other prong on that 2 side, and then that ground wire along with the other ground wire will get soldered to the center prong of the opposite side. And then you'll solder a yellow wire to one of the left prong, and you'll solder the blue wire to the right prong of the 3 side. And that will be your rotary encoder all soldered up. Couple things to know. The quality on these rotary encoders, they vary. So it doesn't really matter which blue side or which side gets blue and which side gets yellow on that 3 prong. You can swap those. They might get swapped just because of the quality of these. So something to know. All right, so next you're gonna want to wire up your switches, your buttons. So a couple things here. So I soldered all my wires on. You'll notice here I put heat shrink on. However, on some of these other spots, this looks kind of nasty because I actually covered it up in hot glue. So, right, these 3, I want it to run vertically down. I didn't want it to come out this way because there's just not a lot of room in the timer if you have it coming out that way. So I soldered it on vertically, and then since I couldn't put a very easy heat shrink on there, I went ahead and just covered it with some hot glue to make sure that during my assembly I wouldn't get any kind of unintended electrical contact. So to start, there's a couple things you need to know about this. Quality control is not great on these. So, right, this lead and this lead are for your LEDs. These 2 leads are for your switch. So the yellow wire, that's got a 220 ohm resistor soldered to it. So the 220 ohm resistor gets soldered to the yellow wire, and then that resistor gets soldered to this lead. Because the quality control is not great, the LED might actually be the wrong way. But luckily you can actually just pop this out. So you just pull on it, and then you could turn it around if you needed to. So if when you solder it together, the light's not lighting up, then yeah, just pull it out, turn it around, shove it back in. That should fix it. Yeah, so a little bit of quality control there. But yeah, so you're going to solder your yellow wire with the 220 ohm resistor to here. You solder your blue wire to here, again making sure it runs vertically down. You'll solder your 2-inch ground wire from this lead to here, and then you'll solder your other ground wire from that lead down there. As far as wire lengths, you can just look at the table that I provide on the website. So yeah, pretty simple. The blue one will get wired up the same way. Yeah, I think that's it. Alright, so before you can solder the LEDs, you're gonna have to remove this clear protection coating. So I just use an X-Acto knife to kind of cut that off, clean it off. Just make sure that you're not damaging the leads. So then once you have that all cleared off, you're gonna solder the red LED wire to this 5-volt. It says 5+ volt. I don't know if you can see that. Might be too much of a glare. You're gonna solder the black ground wire to this side over here to this ground spot, and then the center lead you're gonna solder some wire for the signal wire. So that should be an orange wire, and that says DIN, so digital in. So that's how you're gonna solder those. Or if you want to, you can actually get these quick connects. I like to use these quick connects because I do a lot of things with LEDs, so I have them. They're not necessary. I didn't start with them originally, but they can be nice. So the only downside to that is the quick connects, you can't really fit the 18 gauge wire in there, so you have to have more like a 20 gauge wire, which I have on hand. So I went ahead and used it. You don't have to use it. But yeah, it is. So right here you can see what I was talking about, where I got my red wire on this 5-volt. I've got my black wire on the ground. I've got my orange wire on the digital in. And I do think it's better to solder the orange wire, the actual wire, to the LED lead, and then solder the resistors to that wire, right? So I've got two 20 ohm resistors here, so there's one 20 ohm resistor there, one 20 ohm resistor there. So you do need two resistors there, right? Make sure you cover those with heat wrap, and yeah, that is how you solder up the LED, or use the quick connect if that's what you want to do. Oh, just as a quick thought, these wires are actually too long right now, so I need to trim those down. I just didn't know exactly what wire length I wanted to trim it down to, but the table that I gave you earlier, that will have the correct wire lengths. Okay, you're going to want to go ahead and solder on your XT60 connector to your LED wires. So I put the male connector onto my LED wires that are attached to my layer 3. So I do that, and then on the wires that are going to connect to my actual LEDs, I solder on the female connector there. Alright, so once I've got everything soldered together, I'm going to take my rotary encoder, I'm going to take the nut and washer off, going to install it into its stand, put the washer and nut back on, use some pliers to get it nice and tight. Alright, and that's now installed, so I can go ahead and put the little cover button on, just slide that on. Alright, now I can install it into my layer 3. So you want to have the opening with the wires facing the power switch, so it's going to go on like that. So I can just slide it into the holes. Alright, and then I'm just going to take a M3 screw that is 10 millimeters long. I'm going to install and attach it to there. Make it nice and snug. So here you got the little backpack for the LCD. That goes in this gap right here. So I just put it on like that. Again, I'm going to take a M3 10mm long screw. Install that there. Leave that a little loose while I get the other one lined up. Alright, so then my LCD screen's all hooked up. So now this is ready to start wiring. So before I start wiring that off, I'm actually going to put that to the side and pull out my new Arduino Mega. I'm going to take layer 5 and I'm going to install it on layer 5. So that hole lines up right there. Install there. Again, just using a M3 10mm screw. Leave that a little loose while I get the other one aligned. So this one's going to go right there. Get a snug fit, don't want to tighten it down too much. Alright, now my Arduino's installed. So now I'm ready to start wiring these two together. Putting all the wires in here. So I got all these channels for the wires, so we can start running the wires. So now I'm going to temporarily mount layer 5 to layer 6. So I'm going to take the Arduino, the side that, oops, I'm going to put that opposite there. So I want this open side to be the side that I go into. You can kind of see there's this little thing right here. It's going to go through that little window right there. That's how you know it's lined up. And I'm just going to take one of the M3 16mm screws that I'm going to use to assemble this. And I'm just going to thread that on. So this is just temporary. It will help me with the wiring. I'll come back and take these screws out in a little bit. Just put that on there. All right, so that is now temporarily installed. Everything looks like it's lined up properly. So now I can go and start adding my wires. All right, so up next, you're gonna install your MP3. So you got this little drawer. So there's holes here. So you're just gonna put it in there. And you're gonna take your number 2 screws. You can put 4 in, or you just put 2 in. So I'm just gonna put 2 in. So you just screw that down. You could probably even get away with 1 screw if you really wanted to, but I'm just gonna use 2. Guess I should make sure that's actually lined up. Alright, so that's all installed. I've already got my memory card in. I'll reload loaded the music on there, or the sound effects, I guess. So there we go. All right, so now this is all mounted together and oriented, temporarily mounted. I'm going to go ahead and add my wires now. So for assembling the wires for this layer 5, layer 6 assembly, I need one red DuPont wire, one black DuPont wire, one orange DuPont wire. I need 3 blue DuPont wires, and I need 3 green DuPont wires, and then I need 4 yellow DuPont wires. All right, so I'm gonna start with the red one. So this one, you actually need to cut it down to 10 inches long. I'm gonna just cut that later. This is gonna be going from this is gonna be what's powering the Arduino. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna attach it to the 5-volt supply here. So make sure I'm attached to the 5-volt. It then has a nice little groove for it to go in. I'm gonna hold that down to make sure it stays there. I can then feed it through that groove. And then that lines up with a groove here. And I can just feed that down through there. All right. And I've got a little flathead screwdriver that I like to use to help push it down into the groove. All right, so now I'm gonna do the black wire. So black wire has the same deal. I'm gonna put it into the ground. All right, I'm gonna hold that in place while I put it through the groove. And I'm gonna let that go. All right, so now I'm going to do, let's see here, I'm gonna do on my yellow wires. So I'm gonna do pin 18, so that's yellow. So I'm gonna go ahead and attach that to pin 18. Make sure I actually get it on pin 18. Sometimes it can be hard to see it exactly. All right, that looks right. Should be that one right there. So I'm gonna hold it in place, run along there. So it's gonna come over here, I'm gonna push it down. All right, and here I'm actually gonna loop it twice. So I'm gonna loop around that once. And then I'm gonna loop around it a second time. Kind of push that all down, make sure that's nice and in. And then I can run it down through there. All right. All right, so now I'm gonna do my blue one. Gonna do pin 19. So right next to it. Okay, do that groove. That goes down here. So I'm gonna use my little flathead to help me get that pushed down. Again, this is a circle where I'm going to loop it twice. Most of the time, all the other circles, I'm going to just loop once, but this is one where I loop it twice. That's 1, 2. All right, so that's all looped. The rest of these, all these circles, you're just gonna loop it once. So I'm gonna go ahead and just speed that up. You can look at the wiring diagram to see exactly where stuff is supposed to go, but you probably don't need to wait this whole time and watch me do it. When you're running pin 8 and 9, so this green and yellow wire, they come over here. Something new to version 5 is they're gonna run down along here, and then there's gonna be this little groove right here. Sometimes you get these little nubs right here can kind of stick together depending on your print settings, so you might just break them off. They don't have to be on. They're just there more for the printing settings. But then you're gonna run these 2 wires through this hole here. So just run those right through there. All right. And then once you have everything kind of in place, sometimes you have to put it a little bit back in place. I like to put some tape over it just to kind of help hold everything where it's supposed to be. You just gotta be careful that you don't cover up the bolt holes, and you don't want to cover up this groove here. You can always cut it later if you need to as well, which I often end up just cutting it to make it easier. So I'm gonna put that piece there. And I'm just using normal mailing tape. Put that one there. This one. Oh. There. All right, I just find that's helpful. I just come back for the areas that I cover up that I don't want to. I just come back with an X-Acto knife. Just kind of cut that off. All right, and there you go. That's the new layer 5 and layer 6. Main differences was we now have these kind of layers, these solid walls here, and you now have this channel that you're going to be running some power wires through. But yeah, that's about it. Oh, I like to come in here and put a little bit of tape on these as well. So I'll just take a small piece of tape, just kind of line it on there, just kind of give it some extra support to help it stay where it's supposed to be. Let's see if we can get that a little bit better. again, I just find that helps make sure that my wires don't come loose. So, and there you go. That's the new layer 5 and 6 for version 5 of my timer. All right, now that we've got all our wires cut and we've got our power wires wired to the switch, we're going to go ahead and install all these power and ground wires onto layer 3. All right, so next we're going to install the wires on layer 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my power switch and I'm going to put it so that the wires are such that lead in the middle of the power switch is on this side of the L3. So I'm just going to feed these down through here. All right, so feed it like that. Just push that down. Those all install. This one right here is going to feed into this groove. It's going to feed down through that hole. These two are going to feed into this groove right here and right here. On the old version, they went all the way to the end, but for this new version, you're actually going to have them go right through here. So there's just kind of this gap here, so you can just stop there. All right, so now I also need to install the rest of my wires. I'm going to loosely install them so that I can do the twist caps, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I've got all my wires loaded. Right, so these two go down to my my twist cap joints 3 and 4. These ones are my LCD, so I attached it to the actual LCD. Made sure I had a little bit of slack there, ran those through. Right, I've got my ground wire for my button, so that's going there. I got another ground wire for a button, that's going there. My power, my USB ones, these are the ones over here. So there's 2 black ones and then there's those. They'll actually come out right here, but for this assembly purposes, I'm putting them all the way to the end to make life easy. I've got my XT60, so I have a female connector on this end, and those are running to their relative spots, so black to black, red to red. Yeah. I think that's all of them. So you can look at the wiring diagram, that will give you a better idea of how to run your wires. So once you kind of have them loaded, you want to make sure you have enough room so that you can do the twist cap and then zip tie it down. So now I'm going to cut these all to the length that I want. Make sure that you don't accidentally mix in your button, the female thread there. So I'm going to cut these all down to length and then add the twist tie, and then we'll go through from there. All right, so now that I got my twist caps on there, I'm gonna go ahead and zip tie these down. So I got these little things right here to zip tie them. So I can just put that here, just feed that through. And I don't have to make it super tight, just gotta get it, kind of hold it in place. So that works right there. Clip off the excess. All right, do the same thing on the other side. that's layer 3. Oh, I forgot to install my rotary encoder. So I got to put that on. All right, so I'm just going to put a little bit of mailing tape on here just to help hold things in place. I find it's useful. So let's see here, I'll go right there. I don't want to go past this little spot right here because they're actually going to bend, but it's nice to have the tape there to kind of help hold that. I'll put a little piece up here just to help hold those wires a little bit better. Add some over here. Hold that. I'm going to run a wire through there, so I don't want to cover that. All right, so that's probably good enough. All right, so now I am ready to mount my layer 3 onto 5 and 6. I already removed those temporary screws from 5 and 6 that I had earlier. This looks like it's all good. It's all taped down, so that'll make it a little bit easier. So the tricky thing here is you now have to feed these wires through this channel right here. So I will start by doing that. So I'm just gonna stick those wires down through there. Make sure those get in there. And that kind of seats. You also want to run your button wires up through here before you screw it down because there won't be room after. So I'm gonna feed those wires here. And then same with the other side. Feed those wires up through here. Yeah, unfortunately I did not make enough room so that you can just do that after. So this gets a little weird, like running some of these wires, but it's not too hard. So, all right, and we'll make sure we get those down and right. Kind of feel it seating itself. So that's all looking good. Oh, we gotta do our LED wire as well. So we'll feed that up through here. All right. So that should have all the wires. Kind of give that a nice little tug so that it's seated properly. So all my wires are run through now. So now I can actually bolt it down. So I'm just going to use some M3 16mm screws. So I can just bolt that down. There. You might have to kind of shift this a little bit to get it to seat properly, but it shouldn't be too bad. Over here. And finally one over here. All right, so you got your power wires running through there. You got your LCD wires, so we can actually plug these in. So yellow goes on that part, and then green goes on the next part. So those are all plugged in. We'll plug in our battery wires, or our button wires later. So we have a 3 on this side. We have 3 on this side, right? We have our LED signal wire. We got our LED power wires. We got the rotary encoder, so we can actually kind of go over here and we can kind of shift this down. Okay, and then these can actually run up. So that can kind of get pushed in there. And it's probably not, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, and I can plug in these wires to the rotary encoder. So those are all plugged in. So I need to do my twist cap down here. You probably already cut your wires for these two. I ended up just waiting to cut them, so I'm going to go ahead and cut those now. So I don't need, it looks like I got some excess wire here, so I'm going to cut it. I think I'm going to cut it right here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to attach my ground wire for my rotary encoder. I can just kind of run that through here. I'm using purple because I ran out of black, but you can use black or purple, whatever works. Actually, I'm going to put it on that right there. That looks pretty good. So I'm just going to push those down. And then I will take a little bit of tape. And I'm just going to put some tape over that to hold it in place. So hopefully that holds together a little bit better. All right, so now I can connect my ground wires over here. This also, I want to make sure that I get my MP3 ground wire in. So I'll go ahead and strip all these. Use the blue one. Strip all those. Kind of twist them together. Those all nice and twisted together. All right, and then I can do the same thing for this one. Don't need all that, so I can just cut that off because I decided not to cut it earlier. And I can strip this. Grab my MP3 wire, strip that. Go ahead and twist those together. Well, I was out of frame that whole time, so I was twisting those together. All right, and then I like to add just a little bit of electrical tape on these ones to make sure they're held together nice and tight. Sorry for being out of frame there, but you get the idea. Right, I stripped them and then twisted the wires together and then put the twist cap on there. And then you could use like a zip tie to kind of hold these together. I'm just gonna put a little bit of electrical tape there. Just to make sure it's nice and held together and I'm not worried about my wires touching. Nothing wrong with being a little extra cautious. All right, so those are all gonna stay there. So my MP3 cables. So this yellow, green, black, and red. On the final version, there's actually a hole right there, but I forgot to print that in this version. And so I'm just gonna snake it back down through here. Either way, you can go through the hole that's actually meant for it, or you can snake it back behind it. So just gonna put those in there, and then kind of put my twist caps in there. And I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more tape just to kind of hold that in place so that it doesn't pop out on me. All right, and there is your core brain assembled. So there we go. You can also zip tie this down right here. So there's a zip tie hold right there. I'm just short on zip ties right now. All right, so now we can install the core onto the base. So there's a couple options. If you're using the MP3 base, right, it's got this little base here, this will slide in there. If you're using the MP3, then you can bolt the core to the MP3 and then just have longer bolts that run through the MP3 up into the shell. Or if you don't want to use the MP3, you can just put that to the side and you can bolt the core directly to the battery compartment, the battery base. So it's up to you what you want to do. Before you do that, you're going to want to go ahead and install your USB connectors onto your core. All right, so I'll strip these wires a little bit. These you don't need to strip it very much. Just give it a nice little bit of wire to attach to your connector. Depending on your connector, you might have like a 5-pin or a 4-pin. So just look at your connector and see where you need to connect what. There should be like a minus sign and a plus sign. So in this instance, this is my minus sign. So I can just screw that down there. Make sure that's nice and tight. And then my plus sign is this one right here. So you're just gonna have to look at yours to figure out where your plus and minus signs are. Again, just put that in there. So that's nice and good. Do the same thing on this side. All right, so I got those installed. I'm gonna go ahead and mount this directly to my MP3 base. So the power cables go on this side. I can just flip it over like that. And then I take I just take my M3 16mm screws and get that to go through. There we go. Looks like mine were a little stuck there. That one went fine. That one went fine. So we're using using these inside spots. Again, so I go there, I line it up, just screw it on. Same thing over here, just line it up. I want to make sure that I pull my MP3 wires out so they don't get trapped inside. Get that all tightened down. Should be nice and snug. All right, so that's all attached to my, the core, so my core is mounted. If you want to, you can also install your data cable here for doing updates. I actually find I'm usually able to get and put it in even after the shell's installed, so I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to leave that off for now. Oh, notice, right, I caught my wires there. Don't want to do that, so I'm going to loosen this up a little. Just make sure my wires are free. Come on. Okay, there we go. So it's pretty close, tight right there. So, but your wires should be loose. They should not be caught underneath it. All right, so now I just snug those all up. All right, so my wires are nice and loose there. They're free. This is all mounted on. I've pulled my MP3 cables out so I can actually attach that right now. So that just comes here. So my black wire goes on, this side. Looks like my black wire is a little bit long, so maybe want to shorten that. So that's on there. The red wire goes next. All right, after my red wire comes my yellow wire then goes. So let's get that yellow wire in there. And then my green wire. Come on. And I guess you could always just take this off instead of having it installed there. That actually might be easier. So I went ahead and installed it. So that's all hooked up. Alright, so then I can just slide that in, and I can just screw that in there. I forgot to put my brass insert there, so I need to go still do that. But do that, and then you can just screw it on there. All right, so this is all set. So that's the MP3 base. Now I'm gonna go ahead and install that on my battery base. So before that I do that, I'm gonna take my charging cable for my USB bank. I'm gonna plug that in. I'm gonna make sure that I have a little cover on the USB bank, or on the USB connector, just to making sure I don't get any kind of shorts. And then I will go ahead and plug this into my USB. Making sure I got my power off right now. All right, and then I can just set this down in here. Gonna get my power cable untangled there. All right, so that's all sitting down in there. Kind of tuck my wires in. All right, and that is all ready for me to put my shell on. Actually, I think I'm gonna go mount my MP3 to my shell before I put on that base. So I'm actually gonna take this off real quick. All right, so I'm actually gonna install my core onto, or install my MP3 onto the base, or into the shell. That's why I have some extra spots for the heat inserts. So I can go ahead and just drop that on there. Just making sure my cables are all kind of tucked in. Make sure those ones are all good. Those are good. Good there. Those are all good there. All right, so that's all good there. So that's installed now. I can just use some M316. So I'm gonna put them through this hole. This hole right here is actually the bolt that goes through the base is gonna go through that hole right there. So I'm just gonna screw that on. Squeaky, squeaky. Right. I don't really need all four, so I'm just gonna do 2. But if you want to do all 4, it's there. But I don't feel the need to do all 4 because I'm gonna run 4 bolts through it anyways to attach the battery base. So that's all attached, so that's all good there. So this way I can pull my batteries out if I want to. All right, so again, I'm gonna take my battery here, make sure my power is off. Gonna plug that in. Plug that in. And then this kind of just flips down into there. Make sure my charging cable's out. All right. I'm gonna just kind of set it there. And I'm gonna use, I'm gonna use my 35 millimeters. So this is if I was gonna attach directly to the core, but I've already attached it to the core on the MP3 base, so I don't actually need to use these holes. So I'm gonna go here. Oh, and it looks like I forgot to put the nameplate. So there's a separate piece that you can print in any color you want that you can kind of put for the website nameplate. But I forgot to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just keep installing it. So that's a 35, that's an M3 35 millimeters bolt there. Grab another one of those, put it right there. A few little squeaks. Grab two more. Again, I'm putting it on these outside holes. Those inside holes I'm not using this time because I already installed my MP3. If I was bolting this directly to the core, that's when I would use those holes. So, feels like I might actually be able to use a little bit shorter bolt here. Sorry about the squeaks. Yeah, that feels a little long. Looks like I have something on my table. Okay, I kind of tuck my wires in there. And then this is my charging cable, making sure that I have my cover on so I don't short anything. That can go in there. Oh, looks like I forgot to put my heat inserts in here, so I gotta go do that. Once I do that, right, then I'll be able to install my battery, so I can just screw that on. All right, so you just screw that on. So there we go. Now the base and the shell is all put together. And I can work on doing the rest. All right, so now let's attach the LEDs to the base. So the LEDs come with this backing that you can take off, and it's got like a sticky substance on the back. I found that that doesn't stick well enough to like 3D prints and things like that to actually hold on very well. So what I actually do is I will actually peel that off, and then I will actually stick it to just normal paper, and I'll stick that to that first, and then I'll glue the paper to my 3D print. I just use hot glue. You could also, I've used epoxy in the past as well. But it just, when you stick the stick to the paper and then glue the paper, that seems to work much better. All right, so I'm just going to feed my LED down into there, and then I'm just going to go glue this on so it just wraps around like that. So I'm just going to go glue it on. All right, be right back. All right, so that is all glued on. Again, I just used hot glue to glue it on. Just start over here and just slowly work my way around. So I can go ahead and hook these in. So I can run my orange wire through there. Run that through there. Let's connect the orange wire. So orange to orange. And I can connect my power. Alright, and I can put those down in there. Get a zip tie. right there. All right, cut off that excess zip tie. All right, and my LEDs are all installed now. Oh, make sure I didn't get any of my buttons. All right, so that has my LEDs installed. All right, so up next we're going to install our buttons on layer 2. So this is layer 2. This cutout is for the LCD screen. This cutout is for the power switch. So when you have it in this orientation, you want the blue button on the left and you want the red button on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off, feed it through that hole. Notice there's a chamfer right here. That chamfer, you want the chamfer going towards these buttons, right? So the completely flat edge is on the underside. Make sure that your buttons, they have little your buttons have like little knobs here, so you make sure that drops into the right spot. You can just spin it around until you get to the right spot. All right, and then you put on your retaining nut. You don't have to tighten it down super tight yet. We'll do that in a minute. I'll do the same thing with my red one. Down the right spot. Put that retaining nut on there. All right. And then I'm going to install my switch LED. Put it in there. There's little tabs in there that you're going to line up. So it's just, once you slide it on there, then you just twist it. I should put it in the spot. You can test the button, see that it triggers the switch. All right. Do the same thing for the blue one. All right. I'm going to rotate that, so I want these leads facing towards my cutout for my power switch. So once I have those in the correct spot, I'll go ahead and finish tightening down that retaining nut, make it nice and snug. Should be able to just do it hand tight. And there we go. So now those are all installed, ready to get installed onto the timer. Alright, so we can go ahead and install our buttons onto the shell. So this long one is the LCD. So I'm going to put my buttons down like that to make it easier, so that when I flip it onto here, it'll be in the right orientation. So then I can attach my buttons. So I'm going to attach my blue to blue on the right hand side. I'm going to attach my yellow to yellow on the right hand side. And I'm going to attach my black to black on the right hand side. Alright, so that is that button. And then I do the exact same thing on the other side. So blue to blue. Yellow to yellow. And black to black. Alright, so now I can actually start to, so I can lift this up and I can start to kind of feed these wires down into the cavity there. So kind of push those down. Push those ones down. So it can be a little tricky. Kind of getting it and angling it down so it's kind of knows where to go. Okay, and then you kind of just get in there, just kind of wiggle its way down until it's nice and firm against there. So that should be sitting nice and flush on this surface here. All right, and now it's ready for us to put the top on. All right, so you can take your layer one. I've got the little nameplate, so you got the FrankenTimer right there. So you can just take whatever color nameplate you want, and that should just snap into place. And there you go. Okay, so now that we've got our nameplate in place, we can go ahead and install this. So right, you got a cutout for the LCD screen, you got your button cutouts, you've got your power switch cutout, and you've got your rotary encoder cutout right there, rotary encoder cutout. And then you have 4 screws, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to slide this on there. Wiggle it on. Nope. Looks like I didn't. So here, I kind of got to shift my buttons a little bit to get them to properly align. Alright, so there we go. Right, so those buttons have a little bit of wiggle room in the holes they are on, so you just kind of have to shift them a little bit. Alright, and then I'm going to use my M3 14 millimeter long screws to do these 4 screws here. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so now that is fully assembled. All right, got my LEDs, got my port for my MP3 aux cord, got my door for my charging cords there. Got everything installed. Yep, got the access door all installed. So that's good to go. All right, so we can go ahead and turn on. First, I'm gonna actually plug in a speaker. So again, I've got a little aux port right there, so I can plug my speaker in. And then let's turn it on.
King of the Hill.
All right, looks like the MP3 audio works. My buttons are lighting up, perfect. My LCD screen is lighting up. It wants to make sure that I've got this plugged into my USB power now. So one thing about this timer is you don't want to have the LEDs hooked up and be running and be powering it through the data port. At least not without the USB running. So you want to have it at least running off the USB power bank. So I can hit yes. Everything lights up. It's green. I can start to go through the menu. I still need to work on this rotary encoder. I haven't finished doing the programming for that yet, so that's going to be a program update, but I wanted to include it because I know I want to do that. So there you go. That is the assembly guide for the FrankenTimer. There should be a link in the description to the Facebook group. That's probably going to be the easiest way to troubleshoot it if you're having issues. So you can post something there, and either someone else that's been working on it, or I will try and keep an eye on that, and hopefully we can help you get yours working.